Bass Case Season 2, Episode 2, Triads, Part 1. Triads. The fundamental basis of a chord, no matter the quality. And please know when I'm speaking of quality of a chord, we're talking about whether it's major, minor, diminished, dominant, or augmented. We're not talking about quality as in good or bad. But triads, they're so inherently important to musicians. You know, musicians of all kinds, horn players, composers, vocalists, bass players, and they're so underrated. And this has been an emerging and rising topic with me for more than a few years now. In the music theory and ear training classes I teach at the school I teach at, I stress the importance of knowing your triads. And I'm placing knowing in quote marks because knowing your triads, like knowing anything, means many things. Knowing your triads, starting with spelling them, you know, going through the majors, C, E, G, F, A, C, B flat, D, F, E flat, G, B flat, A flat, C, E flat, and etc. You see what I did there? I went through the spelling, through the triads, through the cycle, you know, check that back from a couple episodes ago. And if you haven't checked it out, please do so. Going through the cycle is important. I went through it in major. I can do it in minor, right? C, E flat, G, F, A flat, C, B flat, D flat, F, and so on and so forth. Executing them on your instrument through the cycle and otherwise, so important. On electric bass, it's easy. I'll check out the video on my YouTube channel where I do it. For electric basses, it's a cookie cutter hand shape. And there's more than one cookie, so there's more than one cutter. But get the first one down and then move on. And that's always the problem. And I've talked about being overwhelmed as a music student, and I deal with a lot of music students. Just knock down major triads in one hand shape. Don't get caught up in trying to do majors and minors and diminished and augmenteds all in one session. Just knock down 4 major triads in one hand shape. Play them with the metronome. Use different tempos. Sing them while you're playing them. Another way of knowing them. You know, sing them without your instrument or a piano. You know, do, mi, so, mi, do, C, E, G, E, C, F, A, C, A, F, B flat, D, F, A. I'm sorry, B flat, D, F, D, and so on. It's important for your ears, and it's important for your development as a musician to be able to sing what you want to play. And I get another earlier podcast. But maybe start with writing them out before attempting to spell them orally. I have my students do that. I create a sheet with the roots in the cycle, you know, so on the left side of the page going down, you'll see C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and so on. And then I put 2 spaces after each root, and I have them spell them. It's a good way to work this out. And you may be thinking, I can do this, so I don't need to write them out through the cycle. Maybe. Do it once anyway. I have students that come into my studio like that, and they don't. They mess up a couple, and we got to get that worked out. You want these solid. I did it a lot as a freshman in music school. But the one hack, if you will, that was so helpful to me is that freshman Phil in music school coming in as an electric bassist was that I had the ability to visualize the fingerboard in my head and spell the triads and 7th chords and arpeggios to the 9th and scales and intervals, all by visualizing the fingerboard in my head. Now that's an advantage that bass players have. Trumpet players I don't think can do that. Guitarists can do it though. So to give you some viewpoint, I could visualize the neck and fingerboard and see my second finger pressing the C on the A string, then my number 1 finger pressing the E on the D string, and then following up with my pinky, my 4th finger, right, pressing the G on the D string. And I could see that in my head and know which notes were what. And it was so helpful in spelling triads on the spot. or if I needed them when I was taking an exam. And that's a skill set you have to build on, like absolute pitch. But I think it's more important than absolute pitch, and it takes you further down the road in your musicianship. And I remember students going to me, "How do you spell triad so fast?" And I was telling them about that. And these are vocalists and horn players, and they were like, "I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not a bass player." But I spoke to some bass players about it, and they weren't able to do it. But it was that idea that I could visualize the fingerboard in my head and see each note and know the note name, and that helped me understand it. And it was also valuable, as I was saying, playing through the cycle or knowing intervals. I could see my little finger, my first finger pressing down on the C on the A string, and knowing a fifth was 2 frets over, 1 string down, that G. And so I knew what the intervals were. I even had the idea how they sound because I could hear the sound in my head. But when I said playing through the cycle and otherwise, when you're doing this exercise of playing a triad, you could be going up in half steps. That's valuable. I could be going through the cycle, but in random order, like Anton Schwartz's random brute sheet. He's a great saxophonist out of San Francisco. And the sheet is a square of 144 brutes, each one in rows of 12 randomly. So you start with C, and then it goes to A flat, and then it goes to B, and then it goes to B flat, and then D random. This is good too. I like the cycle. You should always be able to do that. But the otherwise I've been teaching a couple of students lately is playing the triads over a tune in harmonic rhythm. Now, harmonic rhythm, that's a concept I learned in music school, and it served me well. And it's taking a tune and playing the triads as though the tune was being played in performance or rehearsal, like if you were playing with a rhythm section. And you can do this with a backing track on YouTube or just with a metronome, and just start with quarter notes. So let's say I had the first 4 bars of Lady Bird in C major, right? And the first 4 bars is C major for 1 bar, C major again for a 2nd bar, F minor 7 for the 3rd bar, and B flat 7 for the 4th bar. And I'll do this on the video. And so for the first bar in quarter notes, I'll play C, E, G, C. And then for the 2nd bar, I'll play C, E, G, C, or I'll play C, E, G, E. And the 3rd bar is F minor, so I'll play F, A flat, C, A flat. And the 4th bar is B flat 7, so I'll play B flat, D, F, D in quarters. And when you do this, you're really building into your ears and fingers the changes of the tune because you're playing the triad of the chord. But bonus, the triad in quarter notes makes a nice fundamental bass line. It's a good place to start. But later, after you've mastered doing this for the tune, you manipulate the triads. There's a measure of Lady Bird. It's later on. It's about in the 3rd. I think it's about the 9th bar. It's an A flat major sitting there, and I have my students play the triad out of order. I have them play A flat, E flat, C, E flat, because it fits on the bass better. It sits on the double bass better. Now, this is the way to playing arpeggios in our harmonic rhythm and taking them out of order. Now, to give some context and disclosure, how I learned this in music schools, we had to play not just the triad, but we had to play all the way to the 9th. So let's just take C major. So I had to play C, E, G, B, D, the arpeggio, right, up to the 9th. And we had to play that in 8th notes. So it's E, G, B, D, B, G, E. At a quick tempo. Now that was to grease the wheels of our soloing capabilities and to really know how the tune sounded and that we had something to go to. Using quarter notes, though, is a good way to start that. I've not heard anybody do that. I'm sure I'm not the one inventing this, but it gets you ready for that later on. I mean, you've got to walk before you can run, right? You've got to be able to walk changes before you can solo changes if you're a bass player. That's one of my unwritten rules. But using quarter notes gets that going, and it gets you ready for that, and it helps you stylize your walking lines also. If you have questions, email me at phil@basscase.co. I'll talk to you soon.